Hello everybody, welcome to the Daily Sip. My name is Oliver and my mission is to bring you closer to organic Japanese green tea, and today what we're gonna dive into is strainer versus Kyushu teapot. So actually many people ask us in recent times what should we actually use when we brew Japanese green tea. Of course, what we say then is you have to take the teapot. But a strainer can absolutely be an option if you don't want to spend your $50 on a new Kyushu teapot. So it is quite a pricey utensil which you use for the Japanese green tea, but maybe there is absolutely the option of the strainer. And today what I want to do is really to dive into the topic, okay, strainer versus teapot, pros and cons of both. So first, where we go is pricing. As I mentioned before, when we talk about this Kyushu teapot, is around $45. Some teapots, you might even get them for around $40, but the lower you go with the price, the more difficult it gets. And especially for Japanese green tea, it is good if you have a 360 strainer like this one here. So this is absolutely a possibility to brew all different kinds of green teas from Japan, especially when you go into the Fukamushi teapots or Fukamushi teas. There absolutely you need a teapot which has this strainer which just leaves enough space that the water can properly flow through and flow out of your teapot, not that there is any after brewing. But a strainer is absolutely a possibility to use. This can be also a very cheap tool. Here we talk about $3 to $5. You can even go up to $10 to $12 to $15, but this here you get it quite fast in any supermarket, so you don't have to go to the specialty Japanese or Asian store. You can just buy this either in a tea store or you already find it in a bigger supermarket. For example, Walmart or maybe even Costco. So easy to find, cheap price versus a little bit more expensive. But the idea here is really to understand what is the pro, what is the con when it comes to the brewing. Of course, we will need the same amount of tea. So what I prepared are actually 2 times the same amount of tea. So here, what you can see, this is a little bit of a bigger leaf tea. So it is a tea which is coming from the region of Yakushima. Just one tea I recently got for tasting. It is quite a nice tea, quite a sweet tea. As far as I can remember, not too strong, so not a very strong tea. So it gives me quite a good basis to just see what actually this tea is doing when it goes through the brewing process with a strainer. And on the other hand, I'll go to the brewing process of the Kyushu. So let's start with both of them. So what I will do is that I will use the same amount of water for both brewing types, that we really have a fair comparison. So I heated up my water to 70 degrees Celsius, which is around 165 Fahrenheit. And then I will use exactly the same amount of water for both. Good. So then we put the strainer, we just put the strainer in. Okay, so I used the 5 grams in the strainer, so you can see here the leaves are inside, so they are nicely at the bottom, and now I will put them into the brewing. So just check time, so leave it in for 1 minute, and I'll do the same with the Kyushu. So just pour in the leaves, and then I use this amount of water. Voila. And I'm gonna brew it for 1 minute too. Good, this I leave in a little bit longer. So what is important is actually when you talk about the brewing or the brewing time is really that the leaves need a certain amount of time. And in comparison to some indications which are on the leaf tea or the tea bag instructions, there we talk sometimes about 2, sometimes about 3 minutes. Japanese green tea really just needs 1 minute. So here we're going to leave it in for 1 minute. This means for this glass 12 seconds more, and for the Kyushu it's around 20 seconds more than this one here. So we can already take it out. not shake too much. Good. Just try to get the water out, and then the 20 seconds are already over for the Kyushu. Here already the brewing is a little bit easier. Good, so now we have a nice comparison between these two, and already now in the water color, or maybe more in the clarity of the water, you can see that actually this one here with the strain is already a little bit clearer, less cloudy than the one. So maybe I just go a little bit closer. So you see there's a slight cloudiness in this one here. And cloudiness, I often know, out of my experience, is often the proteins, you might say, but in tea language you always talk about the amino acids. So mostly talk about theanine. So when you have maybe already drunk a gyokuro or maybe a kabusu sencha, which is a longer shaded sencha, there you might have made the experience that you have quite a cloudy and very intense taste profile with these teas. Here, when I just look at these two glasses, I assume that actually this one here has a little bit more of a sweeter taste to it than the one from the strainer. When we look at the leaves, which are actually in the strainer, so you can see they opened up a little bit, but not too much. So this is the first brewing which we are getting. Maybe I can take these leaves out, and then we compare this also to the Kyushu. And you directly see, it's obvious that the Kyushu gives much more space to the leaves, so they can unfold easier, and especially all of the leaves can unfold. Here they're already a little bit cramped inside. Before you had a little bit of space, but that's the beauty of Japanese green tea, which is actually going into the direction that you have very tightly rolled leaves, especially for the higher grade senchas and high grade gyokuros. So they actually do need space to evolve, and do need space actually to unfold. Good. So now let's go into the tasting of these two teas. First one is the strainer tea. Quite sweet. I get a little bit of grassiness, but it's a light tea. I wouldn't say it's a very, very strong tea. I now get a little bit of this umami, a little bit savory notes also in the second. I would say it goes a little bit in the direction of peach, slight pineapple, but not too sugary. In the forefront, I really get a little bit of a spinachy, a little bit of artichokes. Even I get a slight, yeah, it's a spinachy kind of. No, cucumber it's not. It's really staying in the more spinachy, a little bit green side, and then evolving nicely into a light sweetness, a little bit of pineapple, a little bit of peach, so something in between these two fruits. Good. So a very beautiful light tea now that I tasted it with the strainer. Now let's go into the Kyushu tea. Okay, super different in comparison to this one. So it's not as light as the one from the strainer, and it definitely shows much more sweetness. So somehow the more space apparently leaves the tea leaves more space to really give a full flavor spectrum, meaning from the teas that if it opens up, it really can give also a sweeter notes to the tea. So this is quite interesting. What we have to also say is, due to the pouring in the cubes and in the glass, the water temperature is slightly lower. which then triggers a little bit more of the sweetness. But here, from the beginning, I got a very sweet round note. I even get a little bit of mango in now, so the spectrum broadens in the sweetness, in the fruit spectrum. And I get even a little bit of a nuttiness. So this is very, very beautiful. What I personally like, when a tea is not too strong in its savory flavor profile, which this tea definitely not is the case with, that it drifts off into a too strong, savory, nearly a little bit salty notes. This can absolutely happen when the tea is strongly shaded. Here I get a lot of sweetness, roundness, and I get a little bit of nuttiness. So the complexity of the flavor profile is quite impressive. When we just take out the leaves of the strainer, I try to get them out, and you see that they're quite cramped. So here at the bottom, you see that they're quite strongly pushed together. Nevertheless, it's not a strong critique from my side on the tea. The strainer is absolutely a good tool as a first tool if you don't want to spend the money to get into the teapot. Because finally, it is not giving the amount of space maybe it needs, but it's already much better than a tea bag, small tea bag, or these small tea eggs, which might be common also to be used to make tea. So here we definitely give space to the tea, but we see and we learn here that the more space you give the tea, the more flavorful, the more sweeter, rounder, more complex, and here in this case of this tea, it really gives this additional nutty note, which is quite a special note, and you often get only from very high grade and very, very, very good quality green tea. So when you have a little bit more of bigger leaves already, which don't expand that much, like for example when you go into the bancha, there you might be absolutely well off with the strainer. The more kind of, let's say, sophisticated the tea, the more intense the rolling is also, and the more space actually these tea leaves need, then I would suggest you to really think about maybe trying to get either a strainer which gives a lot of space to the leaves, or you get just the QC teapot, which is absolutely the best tool, in my opinion, to brew the Japanese green tea, especially if the leaves are tightly rolled. So, but I'm a little bit curious if maybe the strainer can pick up a little bit in terms of its taste notes with the second brewing. So let's just try to make here a second one. As you can see, I can reuse the leaves, absolutely no problem. This is a very, the big difference of high quality leaves versus the tea bag. Tea bags, you only can use them once. If you're very, let's say, if you don't ask too much of the tea, maybe you can use it a second time, but rarely the taste is as good, as also natural flavor enhancer are used often in tea bags. Good. So then let's go to the second one. Same amount of tea. Water here. Okay, I got lucky. I just have enough for a second brewing with these two. And then we just drop it in for 20 seconds. And then we're gonna use it directly. So voila. Very, very good. Good. Take it out. Not too strong shaking, but a little bit. It's fine. And we do the same here. Good. Now we can see actually that the tea has picked up. So the tea from the strainer has picked up in color. So now I'm curious if it gets closer. Just get out also all. But still a slight difference, but they're much closer to each other now with the second brewing. So we can see that actually here we got the Kyushu tea, and here we got the strainer tea. Still there's more a lighter color here, and we got a more intense color with the Kyushu tea and the strainer. And you can really see that the strainer really starts to fill up more. So you see it's already half full, and the leaves are really expanding. So they're pushing, so the lower leaves are really starting to push the upper leaves up. So you really see that there's this wish, this want of the tea leaves to really have the space and use the space. So, and this is also the positive side of a cylindric, kind of a cylindric strainer, that the leaves definitely can go upwards and really use the space. Good, so this is the second brewing here. When we have a look at the tea leaves in the Kyushu, doesn't seem that much has changed. So we can see that absolutely formidable, absolutely beautiful way of expanding. It uses just more space. They're bigger. They're becoming slight in the direction of these unrolled leaves. There's maybe one brewing more I can do, and then I really have fully expanded leaves. So normally with Japanese green tea, you can just go to these 3 brewings. Some teas you can even go to 4 or even 5, but normally kind of the flavor drop, you might say, is after the 3rd, maybe after the 4th brewing. Good. So, strainer. Still sweet, light. In the beginning. So this kind of a little bit spinachy, greener tones, they're a little bit flatter, they're a little bit disappearing. There's more sweetness to the tea. So as expected, also with the color, with this kind of little bit more cloudy color, more of the sweetness comes into the tea. I got a little bit of mango, a little bit of artichoke. But it still has quite a light tea. It's like on the side I definitely get some flavors, but on the top of the tongue there's, which kind of, when you have a Kyushu teapot, or before in the first brewing with the Kyushu brewing, I definitely had this kind of round feeling, and the problem is that I got used to so much to this Kyushu brewing, as this is the way I brew my tea, is that you just get a rounder perception of the tea, because every part of your tongue is really activated and you get different flavors. That's why this complexity had a little bit on the top of the tongue, had a little bit more these nutty notes. It might be that it triggered my umami sensor, which is kind of at the top, a little bit more on the back of my tongue. So there, absolutely, the tea was kind of playing these flavors out, and then giving me a little bit more of a rounded perception of the tea itself. Now let's go into the Kyushu brewing. Again, much rounder. So it kind of seems that to me, as I do this a little bit with the learning process also here, so I didn't brew it before and I wrote down the script and what do I say where. It's a little bit really going through this experience now, is that it seems somehow that the umami flavor receptors, they're much more activated with the Kyushu teapot. So somehow it seems that they're more of theanine, they're more of these amino acids getting into the tea water as compared to the strainer, which makes the strainer tea absolutely a great pleasure to on the side. So I get a lot of these sweet notes, a little bit light notes, even a little bit more of greener notes. Meanwhile with the Kyushu you get much more of a rounder, you get a little bit of more nuttiness, and then also the side is the same as with the strainer, so it somehow adds just one layer more of taste, one layer, a super interesting layer in terms of sweetness and a little bit of savory umami flavor, if you know this already from Japanese green tea. So really try to maximize the space for your tea, As I said, Q's is definitely a great tool, but if you're using a strainer and you really don't want to spend the money, which I completely understand, then try to get a strainer which is even a little bit bigger than this one here. So maybe here we talk about 2 inches of width here. Maybe you can even go a little bit further and have a bigger strainer, which then maybe also can pass in a bigger cup, or just look that you really give the maximum space to the tea. And another thing, what you actually can do to get a Kyushu teapot at a very cheap price is actually that we have a tea club where we are giving with the first order of the 2 tea packs for $59 this Kyushu for free. So this is also an option you might think about. So at the end, a small promotion, I hope you don't mind. So this is the comparison of the 2 teas. So I wish you a great day. Thanks a lot for watching until here. It's been a pleasure. And never forget, if you have a question, please ask us anytime. You can leave a comment. You can follow us on Instagram on Neo Japanese Green Tea. You can follow us on TikTok on Neo Teas, or you can follow us also on Facebook. So every platform where video is dominant, we try to be present. And let us please know if there's anything you would like us to cover. We will be happy to do so. I hope you like this session here too. And until next time, see you and bye-bye.